Hey, Jenny.
Hello, Commissioner Thomas. How are you?
Doing fine.
Great. I think we'll probably get started in just a few.
Okay.
That's great. It looks like we have a lot on already. Jeremy is also on.
Looks like we're ready to start whenever you're ready, Commissioner Thomas.
Okay.
Okay, I'll start the recording right now.
Thank you. All right. Good evening and thank you for attending. My name is Greg Thomas. I'm a commissioner for the Air Quality Control Commission. I will serve as the hearing officer for this public comment hearing. In case there are any of you who are not familiar with the AQCC, we are governor appointed citizen volunteers who are charged by Colorado statutes with developing the necessary air quality programs and rules governing air quality for the state of Colorado. Meeting schedule and agenda items are available on our website, and we encourage you to join us. The notice for this permit hearing was published in the Denver Post, sent to the AQCC listserv, made available in the Adams County Clerk and Recorder's Office, and published on the Commission's website as of November 7th, 2025. Purpose of tonight's hearing is for the Commission to elicit and record comments on the Air Pollution Control Division's preliminary analysis of proposed Title V operating permits for Crestone Peak Resources Operating LLC's Mustang Booster Station in Adams County, permit number 23 OPAD 52, and Magellan Pipeline Terminals to operate the Aurora Terminal in Adams County, permit number 17 OPAD 399, and whether the permit application should be approved or denied. Drafts of these permits, along with the division's preliminary analysis, were made available to the public for public comment on September 25th and 30th, 2025. Tonight's comments will supplement those written comments submitted to the Air Pollution Control Division or the division within the notice public comment period. It is determined that if it is determined that additional time to submit written comments is appropriate, we may hold the record open longer. The format of tonight's hearing will be as follows. The Air Pollution Control Division will make a brief overview of the contents of the proposed permit renewal and the public comment process. All commenters will be provided 3 minutes to make a comment. You will then be given an optional additional 2 minutes if you plan to address both permits in this session because you cannot attend the second public comment hearing on Saturday. If you plan to make a comment, you should have signed up using the Zoom link prior to the meeting. However, if there is time left after all who have signed up have spoken, we may allow for additional comments. Commission hopes to hear from as many people as possible, so completing your comments within the allowed time is important. The hearing will conclude no later than 6:30 p.m. tonight. Earlier, if all who wish to speak have been heard. At the conclusion of the comments tonight, I will determine the need to hold open the public hearing record for the submission of additional written comments. Members of the public may provide written materials as they comment tonight, but this hearing will not provide an opportunity for visual presentations by the public. Commission will hear and record your comments. The hearing record will be provided to the division staff, who will then respond to the comments in writing prior to or concurrent with a decision on the permit. Neither the division staff, representatives from Magellan Pipeline Terminals, Crestone Peak Resources Operating, nor I will engage in a dialogue this evening or respond in detail to questions posed during the public comment. However, I may recognize a division staff member to clarify a point, offer a perspective, or briefly provide needed information. So I think the staff person who will be Presenting just some of the general information on these permits is Carissa Money. She's the top Title V operating permits unit staff, and will be presenting on behalf of the Air Pollution Control Division. And our Jenny will help run their slides. Again, thank you for your presence at this hearing. We will now accept public comments, and Jeremy will share his screen and timer for public comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Oh, and Jenny, looks like you have the slides up. So can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. And Jenny, are you okay for me to start? Or Jeremy?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Great.
Anytime.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Commissioner Thomas and the rest of the AQCC staff for holding this hearing for us. My name is Carissa Money, and I am the Title V Operating Permits Program Manager. My presentation today includes a slide deck in order to address any accessibility issues related to visual presentation materials. I wanted to let you know that there are no tables, charts, or informational graphics included in any of the slides. Each slide contains only a summarized bullet list of the verbal presentation. Next slide, please. So this evening, I'll be discussing the following topics. I'll give a brief overview of the public comment hearing process, the Title V program. I will also provide simple information on the Aurora Terminal Draft Renewal Permit and Mustang Booster Station Draft Initial Permit. Then I'll go over the administrative steps that follow this hearing and describe options that are available to commenters after issuance of the permit. Next slide, please. So the public comment hearing process. The Air Pollution Control Division issues permits according to the Air Quality Control Commission's regulations. The division issues the permit, and the AQCC is hosting this hearing. For Title V permitting actions that are subject to 30-day public comment periods, anyone can submit a request during that comment period to the Commission for a hearing. We received a request for a hearing for the Aurora Terminal Draft Renewal Permit and the Mustang Booster Station Draft Initial Permit during the 30-day period. A public comment hearing is another opportunity to provide written or oral comments on the draft permits. The AQCC is hosting this hearing for the two permits, and the division will listen to comments at the hearing and respond in writing. Next slide, please. So what is an air permit? The division issues air permits to facilities in order to authorize the legal emissions of air pollutants under certain terms and conditions. An air permit should define what pollutants can be emitted and in what amounts. The permit should identify what steps a facility is required to take to reduce emissions. Air permits also specify how to measure and report these emissions. And the division issues two types of air permits: construction permits and operating permits. Next slide, please. Operating permits are sometimes referred to as Title V permits because the operating permit program was created under Title V of the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990. Colorado's Title V program has been in existence since the mid-90s, with final approval in 2000. The Title V program, for the most part, applies to larger sources of air emissions. That typically means 100 tons per year or more of criteria pollutants in attainment areas, or 25 tons per year or more of nitrogen oxides or volatile organic compounds in a severe ozone non-attainment area. Title V also applies to sources of hazardous air pollutants at 10 tons per year or more of an individual hazardous air pollutant, or 25 tons per year or more of total hazardous air pollutants. Next slide, please. One of the ways that operating permits differ from pre-construction permits is that initial Title V permits are not issued until after sources have already constructed and commenced operation. The operating permit is a legally enforceable document designed to compile all existing requirements and adds operation-related monitoring, record keeping, and reporting provisions. Currently, we have a little over 300 sources in Colorado that are subject to operating permit requirements. Next slide, please. Operating permits must be renewed every 5 years. Facilities continue to operate under the existing operating permit and comply with all applicable requirements until the renewal permit is issued. There are 3 methods to revise operating permits, and each method includes separate review requirements. Administrative amendments require no additional review. Minor modifications require an EPA review period, and significant modifications require public comment and EPA review. Next slide, please. So next, I'll go through some of the details of the renewal permit for the Magellan Aurora terminal. The Aurora terminal is a petroleum terminal that receives refined petroleum products such as gasoline, kerosene, and jet fuel. And that's received by pipeline. The facility also receives ethanol and biodiesel by truck. The products are stored in tanks before being loaded into trucks or sent by pipeline to designated customers. Permanent equipment at the facility includes above ground storage tanks, truck loading rack, and a loading skid with vapor control unit, fugitive emissions from leaking equipment components, and additional insignificant activities. Next slide, please. The initial Title V operating permit for the Aurora terminal was issued on January 1st, 2020. The application for the renewed Title V permit was received on December 21st, 2023, and the draft operating permit was sent to a 30-day public comment period on September 25th of 2025. Next slide, please. The Aurora terminal is classified as a major stationary source for non-attainment new source review, but it is a minor stationary source for the prevention of significant deterioration, also referred to as PSD. The facility is a synthetic minor source for hazardous air pollutants. It also is subject to the requirements under 40 CFR Part 60, Subpart 6B, including requirements for fugitive emissions, tanks, and loading racks. Some of the tanks are also subject to NSPSK or KB requirements. And the facility is subject to numerous Colorado regulations, including Regulation 7 and 24. Next slide, please. This slide shows the facility-wide allowable emissions for the Aurora terminal. Next slide. So next, I'll go through some of the details for the initial permit for the Crestone Mustang booster station. This facility is a natural gas compressor station, which takes natural gas from surrounding sources and compresses it to pipeline pressure before sending it down the line for further processing. The permanent equipment at this facility includes natural gas dehydration units, reciprocating internal combustion engines, commingled liquids tanks, enclosed combustion devices, and additional insignificant activities. Next slide, please. The application for the initial operating permit was received on October 27th, 2023, and the draft permit was sent to a 30-day public comment period on September 30th of 2025. Next slide. So the Mustang booster station is classified as a major stationary source for non-attainment new source review, but it is a synthetic minor source for PSD. It's also a synthetic minor source for hazardous air pollutants. And some of the equipment at the facility is subject to NSPS Quad OB requirements, as well as state regulations, including Regulation 7 and 26. Next slide. And this slide shows the facility-wide allowable emissions for the Mustang booster station. And next slide. A public hearing was requested by the Center for Biological Diversity and 350 Colorado on October 25th, 2025 for the Aurora terminal and on October 30th for the Mustang booster station. As of December 1st, the division had only received one written public comment for the Magellan Aurora terminal. Next slide, please. Now I'll outline the next steps following the hearing. The next step in the process, the division will consider and respond to comments and revise the permit and permit record where appropriate. Then the proposed permit will be sent to EPA for a 45-day review period. If EPA objects to the permit during their review period, the division is required to address the objections. At that point, the division is required to issue the permit if the source meets all applicable requirements. Next slide, please. After the issuance of the revised permit, the applicants have the option to appeal the permit to the commission after it is issued. Additionally, anyone who submitted public comments can petition the EPA to object to the permit if they submit that petition within 60 days of the end of the EPA review period. Next slide. That concludes our presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Carissa. Jeremy, assume you're okay. Looks like we have the list of public commenters, and we will start first. Jeremy Nichols with the Center for Biological Diversity.
Oh, great. Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. We all good? Good to go?
We're good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to comment late this afternoon. My name is Jeremy Nichols. I'm a senior advocate with the Center for Biological Diversity, one of the organizations that requested this hearing. We appreciate the opportunity to provide these oral comments. We will be submitting more detailed written comments as well. We'll get those in before the end of the next public comment hearing on these permits. Our core overarching issues with both of these permits are that both permits do not appear to assure that both facilities operate in full compliance with the Clean Air Act. As currently written, it does appear that these permits should be denied. However, we do think that the division could modify the draft permits to bring them into compliance and assure that both Crestone Peak Operating and Magellan Pipeline are operating in full compliance and fully protecting clean air and public health. With regards to the Aurora terminal, I just want to flag a few core concerns of ours. One, we are very concerned that it does appear that this permit renewal is going to authorize an increase in VOC emissions. That increase is going to be higher than the VOC limit that currently applies to the facility and the underlying construction permit. We're concerned that we understand the division has authority to increase emission limits in permits. However, the underlying applicable requirements need to be modified appropriately, and it does not appear that that's happening here. With regards to monitoring of the vapor combustion unit at the Aurora terminal, or the flare, this is used to control truck loading emissions. We appreciate that the division is requiring testing to verify compliance with applicable emission limits and to measure destruction efficiency of the flare. However, the permit only requires testing once every 5 years, which is very concerning because Magellan's own environmental specialists have indicated that the inlet gases to the flare are often of variable composition and concentration. It does appear that more frequent testing is necessary to assure compliance on an ongoing basis. We're concerned about fugitive VOC emissions monitoring at the facility. The permit requires a component count once every 5 years. Again, I'm not sure why once every 5 years is appropriate, given where this facility is located, both in the severe ozone non-attainment area and very near where people live in the city of Aurora. Finally, we are concerned that it appears that the draft Title V permit does not assure that Magellan operates in compliance with an operating and maintenance plan. This is a core requirement of the underlying construction permit that does not seem to have been carried forward into the Title V permit. We want to make sure that the operating and maintenance practices undertaken by Magellan are very clearly understood and that they're enforceable as an applicable requirement. Moving on to the Mustang booster station facility. Similar to the Aurora terminal, we appreciate that the division is requiring testing of the enclosed combustion device at the facility, the flare. However, testing would only be required once every 5 years, which appears very infrequent, too infrequent to assure continuous compliance. We would urge the division to require testing much more frequently, at least semi-annually. It appears entirely arbitrary that the division just decided to require testing once every 5 years. It'd be nice to get a little more understanding of the division's rationale behind that. especially given that, again, this facility is located in the severe ozone non-attainment area. And of course, the flare is meant to keep VOC emissions below major source thresholds under PSD, which it's very important that those emissions stay below major source thresholds if that facility is going to maintain its synthetic minor status. We're also concerned about the emergency flare at the Mustang booster station. It is an open flare. However, there are means to monitor emissions and test emissions from open flares. The permit does not appear to require any monitoring whatsoever to assure compliance with applicable VOC limits for the flare. We urge the division to consider other options. We're concerned about the gas venting, the routine venting limit, particularly as it applies to tanks at the facility. It does not appear that the permit requires sufficient monitoring of venting emissions from storage tanks, especially given that liquids entering the storage tanks could be of variable composition and pressures. There does seem to need to be more specificity to assure that the volume of gas vented from tanks during routine venting is accurately accounted for. And similar to the Aurora terminal, just want to make sure that the operating and maintenance plan that's required in the underlying construction permit is carried forward into this Title V permit. It does not appear that operating and maintenance plan has explicitly been carried forward, and it does not appear that the permit assures full compliance with that underlying applicable requirement. So thank you for the opportunity to provide comments tonight. Again, we'll follow up with more detailed written comments, and appreciate the division's work on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Next up, we have Paul Cullen.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Paul Coleman. I'm a resident of Boulder, Colorado. I'm a Colorado native, retired computer programmer. And boy, Jeremy is a tough act to follow. He's good. So I just want to say I totally support what Center for Biological Diversity and 350 Colorado are doing here. And, you know, a permit, you guys, the commissioners are giving out permits. It's permission to pollute. And you're saying it's okay to emit these poisons. The oil, the fuel storage, the natural gas, these are poison. These things would kill you if you were exposed to them in quantity. So you're giving these people permission to emit thousands of tons of this stuff into our environment here in Colorado and the Front Range. And I just, please be very concerned about us regular citizens who I don't know the regulations. I don't know your jobs. I hope you're doing a good job. But I do know that those VOCs are bad for us. I do know that it's important that we basically need to convert our society from burning stuff to using the sun and the wind to power our society. And that's not saying we're taking away your freedom. This is saying there's a better way to do this and everyone will benefit. So that's kind of probably beyond the scope of what you're talking about today, but just want you to keep this in the back of your mind as you're making your decisions. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Paul. Next up, we have Rachel Lehman.
Hi, all. I'm Rachel Lehman, and I'm the Legislative Affairs Lead for the Black and Brown Parents United Foundation. And our service area is North Denver, Aurora, and Commerce City. And so this definitely falls within those parameters. The Magellan and Mustang sites are already in an area designated as a non-attainment zone, a place where air quality standards aren't being met. And pollution is a real daily concern for the people that live and work there. In this area, development is booming. New homes, new neighbors, families moving in every month. Yet, as this population grows, so does the risk. New homeowners are being put directly in harm's way, often without warning or real information about the air they're breathing. Developers and companies aren't transparent about the pollution risks, and as a result, communities stay in the dark while the threats to public health only increase. So even if they are moving in, and developers should actually tell people about what's happening in this neighborhood. Fracking is also increasing in this area as well. And that should be definitely told to the new residents, but we shouldn't have to tell new residents or any resident that there's pollution. That should be controlled already. I'm just making that point to really highlight that these plants or these substations may not be in downtown Denver, but they are in areas that will be affecting people. And others have said this already, but I just want to reiterate that Magellan's permit application is misleading and should be rejected. The claim that there will be no increase in VOC pollution, there is a claim that there will be no increase in the VOC pollution, but the data shows emissions would jump from 201 to 207 tons a year. This is a clear violation of the Clean Air Act for this non-attainment area in particular. The Environmental Justice Report relies on this false claim, denying any impact, which is simply wrong. Secondly, flare and combustion testing is nowhere near frequent enough. Both Magellan and Mustang sites only require testing every 5 years. Even though these flares are exposed to weather and can fail long before that. For true accountability, we need at least semi-annual testing, or better yet, continuous monitoring using a widely available technology. Number 3, the state allows venting at Mustang, but does little to track how much gas is actually being released. Without real measurements, there's no way to know how much pollution is happening. This is unacceptable. Other states like California already mandate state systems that capture and reuse this gas instead of just releasing it into the air, and Colorado should do the same. Given all these gaps, inadequate monitoring, inaccurate reporting, unchecked venting, these permits do not meet the standards of the Clean Air Act. And as advocates, we urge the state to deny the permits outright and demand better protections for the communities impacted by these facilities. I also want to make note that I'm just testifying tonight, making public comment tonight, and not the other date. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Next up, we have Brandon Brown.
Hello, everyone. My name's Brandon Brown. I am a concerned Coloradan. I live in Denver, so pretty close to these proposed permits in Aurora. And I work at the intersection of public health, environmental data, and community resilience. Today, your commission is hearing from Coloradans across the Front Range because you have an ethical and civic duty to reject the proposed air pollution permits as they are currently written. These are major sources of ozone-forming pollution in a non-attainment region that already violates federal health standards. Everyone along the Front Range lives with the consequences of that failure, constantly ranking worst in the nation for air quality. Consequences that this commission has the opportunity to exacerbate for Coloradans by pushing these permits forward. We already see higher asthma rates, more respiratory stress, and communities stuck inside from poor air quality they didn't cause. The draft permits for the Aurora terminal would increase emissions of smog-forming compounds and VOCs, running directly against the clear intent and legal standards set forth in the Clean Air Act. A major source permit should never worsen an ozone problem Coloradans are already falling behind in managing. Both facilities release VOC and toxic pollutants to include benzene, a known carcinogen. Approving permits that allow continued and potentially increased emissions of carcinogens into neighborhoods is not a defensible public health decision. Does that sound like air quality control to you, commissioners? On top of that, these monitoring requirements, they don't even give the public or the state any confidence pollution controls will actually work when we're at 5-year intervals. There's no guarantees that flares are operating effectively, let alone implementing compliant monitoring standards. There is no robust oversight of gas venting at the Mustang booster station, and no requirement that all monitoring reports be submitted to the state. Without full transparency, communities are left in the dark about the air they're breathing. That doesn't sound like air quality control to us. Colorado must remain on track to reduce ozone levels and bring forth a safe and healthy state for all of our people. These permits would push us in the opposite direction, placing the burden on residents rather than industry. If a permit doesn't protect clean air, doesn't comply with the Clean Air Act, doesn't align with Colorado's air quality standard goals, and doesn't implement any kind of precise or accurate monitoring, it must not be issued. I urge the commission to deny these permits outright as they are currently written and require that any and all permit applications going forward comply with the Clean Air Act. All Coloradans share the same air. That's you too, commissioners. For your air quality and ours, do better. Thanks.
Thank you, Brandon. Next up, we have Bobby Mooney.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Bobby Mooney, and I'm the Beyond Oil and Gas Campaign Director and Staff Attorney with 350 Colorado. I live and work in the Denver metro area, and I care deeply about the health of our communities and the integrity of our air. My 7-year-old son has asthma, and our air quality directly affects his health and quality of life. Tonight, we'll speak to the Magellan Pipeline Aurora Terminal permit. This facility is a major source of VOCs, including benzene, a known carcinogen. These emissions contribute directly to the severe ozone problem we face here in the metro area, and the facility sits in a disproportionately impacted community where more than 70% of residents are people of color and nearly a third are low income. These neighbors already carry a heavy burden of pollution, and this permit must not add to it. Yet the draft Title V permit does exactly that. It authorizes an increase in VOC emissions from 196.7 tons per year to 207.1 tons per year. That's more than 20 tons of additional pollution. Magellan claims this increase is insignificant, but for communities already struggling with ozone and toxic air, it is anything but that. Under the Clean Air Act, a Title V permit cannot increase emissions without proper notice and procedures. This draft permit fails that test. The permit also fails to require adequate monitoring. Testing the flares once every 5 years is not enough. Magellan itself admits the flare does not consistently operate effectively. Without continuous monitoring or at least semi-annual testing, there is no assurance of compliance with the limits on VOCs, nitrogen oxides, or carbon monoxide. Similarly, allowing fugitive VOC emissions checks only once every 5 years is unacceptable. These counts should be done at least twice a year as well to protect public health. And let's be clear, a facility of this size, located in a disproportionately impacted community, should be held to the highest standards. State-of-the-art monitoring and emissions controls should be required. It's outrageous to allow this facility to continue dumping its pollution into Colorado neighborhoods while residents bear the consequences. Finally, the permit ignores Magellan's legally required operating and maintenance plan. The plan governs how tanks are cleaned and maintained to stay within VOC limits. Leaving this out of the Title V permit means there's no enforceable way to ensure compliance. The law is clear. A Title V permit must assure compliance with all applicable air quality requirements. This draft permit does not. It cannot assure compliance, and therefore it must be denied. Denial is not optional. It is required, and if Magellan cannot meet the standards, it cannot legally operate this facility. I urge you to stand with the people of Aurora and the Denver metro area. Do not approve a permit that increases pollution, allows occasional monitoring, and ignores enforceable requirements. Our communities deserve clean air, and the law demands it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Next up, we have Jessica Gambino.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment today. My name is Jessica Gambino. As a disclosure, I am an employee of CDPHE, but I am not here in a professional capacity. I am representing myself as a concerned citizen, and the views expressed here are solely mine. They do not reflect the official policy or position of my employer. I hold a master's degree in public health, focused in environmental health, and I've specifically studied the effects of oil and gas on disproportionately affected communities. I am very concerned over the proposal to issue air pollution operating permits for both of these situations due to the populations and communities' health that they will affect. My concerns today will outline three main public health concerns. The first is regarding ozone. Oil and gas development in the Denver metro area is a major contributor to the region's ozone problem. Specifically, the Mustang booster station is a major source of ozone forming volatile organic compounds and nitrogen oxides. Facility is located within a disproportionately impacted community and is within the Denver Metro North Front Range severe ozone non-attainment area. Increased ozone has countless negative health effects, including for people with asthma, children, older adults, people who are active outdoors, especially outdoor workers, of which there are many here in Colorado, as we've heard several others talk about. Ozone can also negatively affect the environment, including habitat quality, changes to water and nutrient cycles, and agriculture. My second concern is regarding air pollutants associated with oil and gas production as a whole. Air pollutants associated with oil and gas production contribute to serious negative health effects in humans. There's a growing body of research that suggests negative health effects for children whose mothers are exposed to that oil and gas development during pregnancy or in early childhood, and they can include increased rates of childhood cancer, low birth rate, congenital heart defects, higher risk of preterm birth, and even increased depression and anxiety, all linked to air pollutants including benzene, methane, soot from compressor stations and heavy truck traffic, and smog. The pollution solely from venting and flaring can result in premature deaths and asthma exacerbation among children. Pollution from oil and gas operations can also travel long distances, meaning that is impacting populations far from the source and not just in those communities directly around oil and gas production. Approval of these permits will increase exposure to these pollutants and increase negative health effects, not only for those communities, but for everyone on the Front Range. My final concern is with transparency for those disproportionately affected communities, primarily affected by these permits. Oil and gas industry chronically doesn't adequately track or disclose air pollution, and the air pollution created from the oil and gas operations emissions is underestimated and underreported. I feel these permits don't require either group to effectively monitor air pollution to ensure controls are operating at all times, and further, the actual pollution data from these facilities must be publicly available so that the communities being most affected know what they are potentially consuming. I implore you to take into account these considerations and the people who will be affected by allowing the permits to go through as is. And I thank you all for your time and energy in protecting Colorado's interests first. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Next up, we have Tom Yeager.
Excellent. Took me by surprise. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, thanks. Hi, I'm Tom Yeager, a concerned citizen of Colorado and planet Earth. This summer, my 80-year-old aunt visited me. The last time she visited was about 20 years ago. And as we were going into Boulder, dropping down the hill off 36, looking over the Boulder Valley, she said to me, "Do you ever get clear days anymore?" This kind of surprised me that she actually noticed that the view had changed. And I replied, "No, not really. And what's worse is that this is really affecting the health of the population, especially childhood asthma." She was surprised to learn, as most of out-of-town people are, that we have some of the worst air quality in the nation. So I'm here today to encourage you to just say no to the operating permits for the Aurora terminal and the Mustang booster station. If the state is serious about improving our air quality, the only way to do that is to stop putting pollutants into the air. This is the responsibility of the Air Quality Control Commission. It is time we put a stop to the oil and gas industry raping our resources and poisoning our citizens. I could not possibly understand under what circumstances the AQCC could conscionably approve these permits, and I highly encourage you to deny the permits to these immoral projects. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tom. Next up, we have Jeffrey Otti. May not be online. Okay, we'll go ahead and come back to that one at the end. Next up, Sabas Castro.
Hi, hello. So my name is Sebas. I'm representing just myself and my family. I'm sorry, really quick. Can you guys hear me good?
Yes.
All right, perfect. I actually live about 10 to 12-minute drives from the Mulligan terminal here in Aurora. And honestly, I didn't even know about this until Jeffrey actually kind of let some of us in a just a little group we have for our community, and finding out that there is something like that so close to my community, but also kind of what's right next to it. I'm not sure if you guys have ever Googled maps, kind of what's around, but that area is surrounded by trailer home parks. And right by me, right next door, is the Children's Hospital. So I was honestly stunned and a little bit saddened to really hear that we are, I guess, having to even have a conversation about whether or not this proposal is even worth approving as it stands. Just because of the fact that there's kids right next door. In my family, personally, everybody in my household, my mother, my brothers, and my sister, all suffer from asthma. I got very lucky, I didn't catch it. But also, I have an uncle who has COPD, and he received that from many years working in construction. And I cannot tell you how many times it gets very scary for my family when the air gets so just, I guess gross would be the nicest way to put it. It gets very heavy around kind of when you get more past like Colfax, and I would say right off the highway, Colfax, and probably like, trying to think what that street is. I am so sorry. I don't drive. I take the bus, so I only know what stops are. But kind of where that Del Taco is off of Colfax after you hit the highway. If you kind of continue going down towards where the station is, you could smell it. The air just does not smell right. And there are some days where it's not too bad, but there's becoming a lot of days where it is pretty bad. And it's kind of crazy to find out, okay, now I kind of know why. I see so many people struggling to breathe when they hit these areas, or I know somebody who lives in a trailer home park that's pretty close to that station, and now we kind of put together a little bit like why her son suffers so bad from his asthma attacks. And it's not the only thing, don't get me wrong. Like, I totally understand our need for these items, but at the same time, we also can't just allow it to go so lightly regulated. We live in a time where if you give them an inch, they'll push for a mile. 5 years to check is not enough. I mean, even think about changing the lint in your dryer. You're not going to wait 5 years to make sure that everything is working correctly. So as it stands now, I would really appreciate it if we are taking a deeper look into making it just safer. It doesn't have, again, I'm just from the community. I'm not from an organization, so I'm not so knowledgeable on that back end. And I'm not going to say that these aren't things we need, but we also need to get way better at controlling them, because the people that live in these areas are suffering. Like I said, it's practically down the block. It's 12-minute drive. I mean, 14 minutes if you decide to ride a bike. So I would really appreciate it if, as you guys are looking through these applications, you're also remembering that people live right next door. And whatever you guys are choosing, we kind of have to face that in our day-to-day lives. But yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to just come on here and share some of my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Sabas. Next up, we have Lance Callahar. Not sure if Lance is online. Okay, and that brings us to our last registered public commenter, Andrew Klooster.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you for this opportunity, Commissioner and Commission staff, to provide public comment on these air permit applications. My name is Andrew Klooster, and I am the Colorado Field Advocate and an optical gas imaging thermographer with Earthworks. And I have served as a thermographer for Earthworks now in Colorado for the past 5 years. And in those 5 years, I have personally conducted over 1,800 surveys using an optical gas imaging or OGI camera of more than 800 different oil and gas facilities, and have shared my video evidence of possible non-compliance of air quality regulations with the Air Pollution Control Division in over 300 instances. Specific to the conversation tonight, I have surveyed the Mustang booster station on numerous occasions over the past 4 years. On 3 separate occasions in 2022, I observed significant uncontrolled releases of hydrocarbons vented from equipment on the facility. Now, it is important to note that I use the term significant here intentionally because this facility is set quite far back from the I-70 frontage road where I filmed it from, about a half a mile or so. And given the fact that OGI cameras have a detection threshold based on proximity to the source, the emissions I have observed, which were clearly visible even from that distance and were traveling beyond the berm on the site's boundary in each case, were of particular concern. On one of those occasions, the source of emissions was a storage tank on the facility, but in that case, no upset conditions were recorded and the site's monitors were not triggered, so there was no determination made as to the cause of those emissions. On another occasion, the emissions were attributed to a frozen dump line on a compressor and were reportedly resolved the same day after the freeze broke, but we observed the emissions on a sunny mid-afternoon with temps in the mid to high 30s. And finally, in another instance, the emissions appeared to have been due to an intentional blowdown from one of the compressors on the site. So these observations highlight a primary concern, which is the accuracy with which the permit accounts for variable venting from site equipment, both due to intentional and unintentional reasons. In the first instance I shared, the release was seemingly not detected by the operator, meaning it would have never been reported. In the case of the frozen dump line, while there was a determination made about a plausible cause for those emissions, the accuracy of the timeline which accounts for the duration of the event is questionable. And even in the case of planned events like blowdowns, there is still a lot of uncertainty about the accuracy with which emissions from these events, which can be intense but short-lived, are being accounted for in calculations and in reporting. So based on our observations, we believe it is essential that this permit ensures that there is robust monitoring of vented emissions from this facility. It is also essential to understand where and why these vented emissions may occur, because, as I mentioned, when we directly observed emissions from one of the storage tanks, for instance, it was not detected by the operator. This is a facility that is already equipped with some control technology. And while some vented emissions may still be unavoidable in some cases, it is also unacceptable that venting may be occurring from sources that could be controlled instead of directly released into the atmosphere in an area that, as we've heard, is already in severe non-attainment for ozone. So the current draft permit, in our opinion, is not sufficient in making these assurances. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. All right, just going back to our list of 2 speakers who did not appear online. Jeffrey Oddie or Lance Callahar, are either one of you here now? Going once, going twice. Okay, is there anybody else online who has not registered who wants to provide any comment? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Oh, Bobby, did you have another question?
Thank you, Commissioner. I just received a message from Lance, who's not able to call in today due to a car breaking down in the mountains. So I wanted to ask if he would have a chance to comment at the second date, if possible.
He can't attend on Saturday.
He could attend on Saturday. He cannot attend tonight.
Okay, all right. Well, then we'll hopefully hear from him on Saturday.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And Jeremy Murray, Jeremy Nichols had indicated earlier that they were going to submit written comments. I know we have the second hearing on Saturday. When is the record for written comment? When does that close?
And we'll close it shortly after that
Okay.
Saturday session.
Okay, so Jeremy Nichols, if you're hearing that, then just plan accordingly. Okay, well, I think that does it. Let me get my little. Thank you for everybody for your well thought out comments. We will take that into consideration. And that will conclude this public comment hearing for Tuesday, December 9th. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.